and play.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright.
And you're listening to The Krypton Report.
And you're listening to Krypton Report.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird!
It's a plane! It's the Krypton Report!
The All Things Kryptonian podcast, including Superman and Supergirl.
We discuss games, movies, cartoons, TV shows, and comics.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Welcome to the Krypton Report. This is a special episode I'm actually doing by myself. It's an episode that I didn't want to miss the opportunity for. It's already behind, and I'll explain why here momentarily. But this is an episode that's a special birthday or just a tribute to Jerry Siegel. October 27th was Jerry's birthday, and what had happened was the family, we had planned to go last week to the Siegel house because it's a nice monument to Jerry and Joe in Cleveland. But some things happened in our personal lives that delayed that. We were going to go on Thursday, but could not go. It's just been kind of a battle to get up there, and we may get to go here soon, but I wanted to go ahead and get this out. It's kind of, important. Jerry Siegel being the writer and one of the co-founders of Superman. And this year I was able to complete my reading of the book Superboys. It is a wonderful book by Brad Ricka. It is just a kind of a biographical tale of the things the boys went through. And I would love to have him on the show one day and break everything down and just talk about it more and more in depth, because it is a great look at just the two men who created Superman. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Jerry today. One thing is, I like to write. I don't know if I consider myself a writer, but I like to write. It's always been a passion and a fun thing that I like to do personally. So I relate more with Jerry. I'm not a drawer. I can't draw, and I hate it because I always have ideas, and I never have anybody to work with to expound those ideas. So a lot of the things that I feel connected to, I feel from Jerry's writing. Also, one of the big things was just listening to people talk about Jerry and feeling, I don't know, he's from Ohio, and I live in Ohio, and I feel a connection with just the way my mind works and the things I kind of dream up and dream about. And I don't think people recognize how important Jerry is to comic books in general. Without Jerry and Joe, you wouldn't get to Marvel. You wouldn't get Stan Lee. And I don't think Jerry and Joe get enough appreciation for all that they've contributed. I'll also reference, so this year, I finished, like I said, I read Superboys. Great book. Bought it on Amazon. Check it out. I also, there's a special that was on AMC, if anybody watches AMC, and I bought this, and I rewatched it. And it is a great 30-minute quick documentary. So if you don't have a lot of time and you're just like, I want to learn about, the struggles that Jerry and Joe had, this is a great quick way of doing so. And it's called Robert Kirkman's Secret History of Comics. It came out in 2017. Episode 3 is called The Trial of Superman. And I just check it out. I mean, it is, you won't be disappointed. That's all I'm going to say. It's amazing as everything is, just check it out, okay? I'm just go get it. It's $1.99 on iTunes if you get the standard definition, I also follow on Facebook the Jerry and Joe Society, Historical Society, basically, out of Cleveland. I know I'm kind of rambling because it's kind of weird just doing it by myself. I've gotten so used to talking with James and Ginny and Brian and Phil, and he graces me with his presence, and any of the other lovely guests that I've had over the years. It's weird being back to just me talking, and this is kind of like how I talk out loud to myself. Just now I'm talking out loud to myself into a microphone for other people to hear, so it's not as weird. But let's learn about Jerry, okay? Jerry, or his birth name, Jerome Siegel, was born October 17th, 1914, and sadly passed away January 28th, 1996. He used many different pseudonyms in his writing, including Joe Carter and Jerry S. He was an American comic book writer, with his most famous creation being Superman. Siegel and Joe Shuster, were inducted into the comic book industry Will Eisner Comic Book Hall of Fame in 1992 and the Jack Kirby Hall of Fame in 1993. Jerry was born in Cleveland, Ohio. Yay! That's why I've always thought that Smallville should have been Ohio, but that's me. And died at the age of 81 in Los Angeles, California. Jerry won many awards for his writing and contributions to comics. He won the Bill Finger Award for Excellence in Comic Book Writing postmortemly in 2005. Jerry was of a Jewish family. His parents were both Jewish immigrants who lived in New York in 1900. Having fled the anti-Semitism in their native Lithuania, his father was born Mikhail Anunkel Sigalovich. And as I've stated many times on the podcast, I apologize if I mispronounce names, but once I hear a name, I'm good. It's the same thing in real life. And his mother was born Sorta Mieta Kalikils. No, I apologize once more. But they changed their name to Michael and Sarah Siegel after moving to America. Jerry was the last of 6 children. His father was a tailor and owned a clothing store. On June 2nd, 1932, Jerry's father was assaulted in his store by a shoplifter and suffered a fatal heart attack, and Jerry's mother died of a heart attack in 1941. So less than 10 years apart, Jerry lost both his parents, and it was Jerry's father's death that really bothered Jerry. Jerry always liked writing. He wrote it a lot for the Glendale paper in his high school in Glendale, in Cleveland. It's amazing how much he loved science fiction and he loved writing. I mean, he would create stories about people he knew in school, and he would create pseudonames for himself to write stories to himself to create interest. Jerry loved writing. He on multiple occasions tried to start his own science fiction magazine. He would write beautiful, well-crafted letters, which is such a lost art form, to famous writers and science fiction writers of the time, one being Ray Bradbury. And just trying to get his name out there, trying to bring attention to his work. It's amazing, and we'll keep going. I don't do it enough justice. I am not a Jerry Siegel aficionado, but at the same time, I just appreciate the work the man has given us, and I just think it's just something to talk about more. Jerry and Joe love science fiction, and in 1935, still living in Cleveland, they began selling comic book stories to National Allied Publications. At the time, that was the publisher that one day would be DC Comics. Siegel and Shuster had been developing the Superman story for years, and it's famously known that the original Superman story was called Reign of the Superman, and it was about a Superman who was a villain. And then they liked the title, and they reworked it. and they reworked the story. And, over the years, it has a very Moses-esque connotation and symbolism. And over the years, somehow, we've bended that more to a Christ connotation, I think mainly because of the Superman the film. But that is the inspiration. When you think about where Jerry grew up, it makes a lot of sense for him to want to create this character. And then through much, this is a very summary of it. Okay, I'm going to tell you it's a summary. Please read the book, search out information, watch the little documentary I talked about. Because they worked selling to national allied publications a lot. They went back and forth with them. And after basically trying with Superman and getting rejected, they basically sold Superman for $130. In today's money, that'd be about $2,300 and some. Superman. And they got jobs, though, okay? So they got jobs out of it. But there was no security in the sense that they could be fired or let go. So they got to work for DC Comics and create Superman. And I've been rereading the Golden Age stuff. I bought the Golden Age of Comics Superman for $3 at Ollie's. Ollie's, if you have one in your area, is great for comic books. So DC now owned the character, reaped the royalties, reaped all the benefits, and just paid Jerry and Joe for their work. So in 1942, together, Jerry and Joe earned $63,000, which looks like, adjusted for inflation, that'd be about $100,000. That's pretty good writing comics. I don't know what a lot of comic books writers make and everything, especially at the time, out of the Depression, post or pre-World War II. Siegel, though, did end up in 1943 he was drafted and did go into the war, and he ended up working in many different jobs of public relations and reporter. He was posted in Honolulu. He wrote for the military newspaper Stars and Stripes. He did a lot of comedy columns. He was discharged January 21st, 1946, at the rank of technician, 4th grade. So Jerry is a veteran. During her service in Hawaii, Siegel learned from Schuster that DC Comics had published a story featuring a child version called Superboy. Now, this is a big controversy. This is a big controversy because Jerry created Superboy. And Superboy, even though it was a younger version of Superman, was looked at as a second character. That'll play in later with why the character being split, why there was a Superboy TV series that was basically Superman, because they were trying to get away with using the name. How Jerry later, after being fired from DC Comics, after him and Joe tried to get the rights back for Superman, they were fired, but then eventually, because of Jerry's wife, he was able to return to DC Comics, and they had him writing, and he got to write Superboy. And he was, he held the rights for Superboy. Now, Jerry was married twice. His first wife, do I have here in my notes? I think Bella Siegel, married in 39, divorced in 48. His second wife, Joanne Siegel, married 1948 and divorced. Well, not divorced. Married till his death in 96. Now, Joanne has a very interesting story, as her and Jerry fell in love, but it was Joe who initially sought her, and that is a very kind of heartbreaking story, and we'll get into that when we do our Joe special. It was very interesting because Joanne is actually the inspiration character model for Lois Lane. And I think in a lot of ways, in a lot of stories, I think Clark Kent kind of represented Jerry, and Superman was what he wished he could be. I think that kind of represents a lot of all of us. after a lot of the legal battles, Jerry was able to write. He wrote stories that a lot of them he went uncredited because he contributed a lot. He did a lot of things for Superman through the Superboy stories that would go later on and be adapted into modern canonization. In 1975, upon hearing that Warner Bros. Was producing a Superman movie, Siegel alerted the press of his conditions and gave as much information to try to stir up interest. Through much deliberation and the help of Neil Adams, and that's a great story to read about, Jerry is most known for creating the follow characters: Dr. Occult, Slam Bradley, The Presence, The Spectre, and the Star-Spangled Kid and Stripesy. Those are really cool, more recently known. He also, upon his second tenure, which would be 1959 to 1966, the Siegel and Schuster story is so heartbreaking is because they created this great thing, but the corporatization of companies took it from them and used it and exploited it and made so much money off of it, and that Jerry and Joe, they did well, but then they lost so much. And as an artist of any kind, a writer, musician, painter, having your project taken from you and seeing other people successful with it is shattering. So, the second tenure, 1959 to 1966, Siegel created the following characters while writing Superboy: Bouncing Boy, Brainiac 5, Cosmic Kid, Triplicate Girl, Invisible Kid, Matter Eater Lad, Lightning Lord, Phantom Girl, Chameleon Boy, and Saturn Girl. And during this time, Jerry did not receive any byline for his stories, which was the normal policy for DC at the time. Another character that Jerry and Joe had created was Funny Man. Funny Man was their attempt at a clownish superhero while still working at DC, trying to broaden their strokes and just, more of the humor side of what they like to create. And it only lasted for 6 issues. Siegel actually worked for Marvel in 1963 under the pseudonym Joe Carter. With Stan Lee, he co-created the villains Plant Man, Human Torch, and Strange Tales number 112 and 113, which was September to October of 1963. So Marvel recognized the importance of Jerry Siegel. He worked at Archie Comics in 1966. And of course, like we said, he did the military stars. In Jerry's personal life, he had 2 children. He had 1 child with his first wife, Bella, his son, Michael, who was born January 27th, 1944, and passed January 17th, 2006. With his second wife, Joanne Carter, he would use her name, get it, Joe Carter, as one of his pseudonyms, like he did when he worked back at Marvel. He had his daughter, Laura, and she was born March 1st, 1951. Siegel, when he passed away on January 28, 1996, of a heart attack, he had been suffering from cardiac disease for years and had biopsy operations. Jerry did a lot in his life for comics and for all of us. I'm sitting here recording in a room plastered with Superman things. Anything from Action Comics number 1 to right next to me is the newest issue of Superman. And And it's all thanks to a kid from Cleveland. A kid who had a dream, who wanted to achieve something. And if we all had that kind of a passion and drive for something we believed in, what could we do to change the world? Because Superman changed the world, which means that Jerry Siegel changed the world. One man. Creating a comic book character. A fictionalized hero that we can all aspire and look up to. Rest in peace, Jerry, and thank you.
Look up in the sky.
Look up in the sky.
Look in the sky.